Here is where we're up to. We are in the middle of chapter 43 in Tanya, and we explained the insights and the understanding of the responsibility, the importance, the purpose of awe. We said there's two things in serving Hashem, the two wings, Ahava and Yira, love and awe. And we spent the last 2.5 chapters, chapter 41, 42 and half of 43, talking about this awe. And we spoke about 5 levels in particular, but mainly 2 levels. What's called Yira Tata, a lower level of fear, and Yira Ilah, a higher level of fear. Just to remind ourselves, Yira Tata had a number of different levels inside of it, all related to coming to an awe, a appreciation of God by understanding our surroundings, understanding how grand and great and significant the world is, and therefore coming to the realization that all of this comes from God, and God is watching. It gave us a feeling of, wow, God's bigger and grander by tremendous times as much as great as the world, and that gave us a feeling of awe to God. That was Yira Tata, the lower level of fear. Yira Ilah was just the opposite, really realizing how insignificant the world is, how non-existent the world is in comparison and in relationship to God, and that gave us a feeling of awe to God. That was the 2 general concepts we explained in Yira, in awe of God. Now we're changing tracks. The next few chapters, we're going to be talking about love. And it's very important to appreciate that this idea of love in its true form, in its true sense, could only come after awe. Meaning it's not just that we explained awe, and now we're going to explain love. As we'll see as we go through this rest of this chapter and further, awe, this true level of Yira, this tremendous acknowledgement and awareness of God in our lives, and to realize how insignificant we are to God, that's what allows us to have true love. We've touched upon love a number of times in Tanya. Now we're going to get into it in a very, very significant way. Before we begin, it's always cool in the chapter that we're learning in the Tanya and the portion of the week, or the chapter of the Tanya in the morning, has some significance. The Chumash from this week, I want to share with you a insight into something in the Parsha that will help us have a window into this idea of love. One of the very unique things you find in the Parsha is when Hashem, at the age of 75, tells Avraham, I want you to leave the land of your fathers, the land where you were born, and go to the land that I will show you. He takes him to Israel. At that time, it was called Canaan. And Hashem, of course, had a plan to test him, to see if he would be happy with this gift. Because as soon as he gives him the land has problems. It's like someone buying you a car, and the engine doesn't work, the air conditioner doesn't work. What's the problem? The problem immediately is that there's a famine, there's a hunger, there's a drought. So he has to go down to Egypt. As he's coming down to Egypt, he turns to his wife and he says, Sarah, I realize how beautiful you are. I realize how tremendously beautiful you are, especially compared to the place we're going to. Do me a favor. Imrina Achesiya, tell people you're my sister. Why? He was concerned if people find out you're my wife, they're going to want to take you away regardless. If they think you're my sister, they'll take you away and maybe even give me some gifts. If they think you're my wife, they're not going to want to have an affair with a married woman, so they'll kill me. So say you're my sister. And there's a tremendous amount of commentary, both in the general commentaries and in Chassidus. What happened here? What was Avraham saying? How could he say, it should be good for me because you're going to be taken away? And what it means as far as the planting the seeds for the future of the Jewish people going down to Egypt. Because as we know, what happens is Sarah is taken away, Sarah is taken to the palace, and before they can do anything to her, Hashem gives a plague upon the Egyptians, and of course Avram gets his wife back, and they go free with great wealth. This, of course, plants the seeds that one day the Jewish people should go down to Egypt, they'll be taken as prisoners, Hashem will throw a plague upon the Egyptians, and they'll go out with great wealth. The actions of our forefathers have a tremendous impact, not just inspiration, lay the groundwork and lay the foundation for all of what happens in the future, which is now history. Well, there's a particular line that Chassidus addresses, and there's a tremendous amount of beautiful, really inspiring insight and food for thought. What is that? The statement that Avram says to his wife, Imrina Achesiyat, say you're my sister. The idea that a man should say to his wife say you're my sister, is talking about two different types of love here. You see, there's a love called the love of a sister, and there's a love called the love of a wife. A love of a sister is a natural love. You didn't have to develop it or work on it. It's there. And at the same time, it's a very calm love. It's very, very not exciting love. It's almost like a boring love. The love of a sister is while it's there and never goes away, even if you get into a huge fight. The truth is, sisters will always love each other, even if they won't admit it, because they have ego or other issues or other problems. The bottom line is, it's a love that's natural and developed just by birth. Then you have the love of a wife. The love of a wife is a passionate love. It's a love that can burn like a fire and burn with a warmth and excitement to the point of tremendous, tremendous unity. Nevertheless, it's not natural. It's a love that didn't happen before. It comes because of factors that create it. And sometimes, God forbid, the factors can end and the marriage can end. So while we see there's two different loves, each one has a quality. The quality of the marriage, the husband or wife love, is the passion, the excitement, the tremendous dedication to the relationship. The quality of the sister love is that it's natural and it's everlasting. It doesn't go away. If you find that you have a love to your sister in a passionate way, either you're living in Kentucky or you should seek some help, because it's not natural that way. What was Avram telling his wife? He was telling to her, Sarah, we're going down to Egypt. During life in Egypt, there are things that get in the way sometimes of our relationship, which means I may not feel every day the love. So I want you to know that even though we may not feel the love as a husband and wife, but the love of a sister is there. In other words, we're talking to a Jew who is in a relationship with God. And there are some times that a Jewish person feels when lighting Shabbos candles or the davening, going to shul, or it's a Yom Tif, or some other mitzvah, you're learning something, you feel the passion, the enjoyment, you're motivated, you're inspired, you're feeling alive in your relationship with Hashem. And it's a phenomenal relationship because it feels so real and authentic, and you're inspired, you're alive. And sometimes that same exact mitzvah could be done, and it's just not exciting. I don't know. It was nice, but I guess it passed. This is the nature of our relationship with God, that there are times that meaning the passionate part takes effort, takes work to create it and maintain it, have it grow. But if ever you're not feeling the passion, at least be a sister. You're living in a state of Egypt. You're going to a place where there's limitations on your existence and your relationship with God. It's not flourishing. Don't worry. You still have the sister love. So this is the idea, meaning the natural love is not as exciting, but keep doing it. Take out the garbage, buy a cake for the birthday. You'll see, you work on it, will come back. This concept, these two types of love and relationship represents these two ways the Jew interacts in our relationship with Hashem. That is a general idea from this week's parsha. Now, as we go into the chapter that we're learning now, it's not going to be that these two are going to match up to the loves we're talking about. But knowing that there's these types of loves will help us as we go into the chapter to see, okay, so there's much more than one type of love. We're going to, in the chapter, discover a much, much more fascinating love. And I guess the love we're going to talk about is a difference between the person that's married for 6 months and a person that's married for 50 years. And I'm talking now in the positive sense. I'm not talking about sometimes in a marriage you have issues. That's normal. That's part of life. That's what we deal with. But we're talking here about a wonderful relationship that could be the first year of marriage and the wonderful relationship that could be 50 years later. And there's a tremendous difference in two areas. One is a love which is exciting and passionate and requires constant activity to express that love. And one is a love that, they just want to sit on the porch together quietly, or they just want to sit and have a cup of tea together. And each one has a different type of expression and place it's coming from. So again, we're seeing that there are various ways and various types of love. In our relationship to Hashem, just like we had in awe and fear, there was two primary types of fear of God. One is a fear that comes from feeling my world, how big the world is, how significant the world is, and yet God is bigger than that. And God is a source of all that. And he is the creator of all that, the soul of all that. And that creates a certain awe, recognizing that everything comes from God. And then there's a type of awe of God that realizes how insignificant we are, how minuscule we are, how non-existent we are before God. The same thing is in the world of love. There's a love that comes from a very, very self-centered love. And it's not necessarily a bad self-centered, but it's self-centered. You make me feel so good. I feel complete. I can't live without you. You're the light of my life. I love you. I can't be without you. It's all about I and how you complete I. You are the light of my life. You make me complete. I can't go. I miss you. It's all I. And then there's a love where I don't exist. I'm lost in the moment. I'm lost in the experience. I'm lost in relationship. There is no me. There is no sense that I feel me. And we're going to see this part of the time this is felt. Truth to be told, we're not going to talk about this right away, but we'll get to this point, is if you're close or far from the one you love. When you're far from the one you love, it awakens and evokes a tremendous yearning. The word kesef in Hebrew, silver, also comes from the word nichsafti, or the yearning, the desire. I need some of the chanafshi. King David says, my soul thirsts for you. It's not saying, God, you're everything. God, I have a soul, and I'm thirsty, and I need you. I can't live without you, God. In other words, the love where it's surrounding me. The love is, I need this to make me whole and complete. That's a beautiful love. It's a special love. It's a powerful love. But it's all about how that love and I are two separate existences, and I am relating to that person that I love. As we'll see, there's a higher level of love where there is no me. It's just the person that I love, or the one that I love, or the thing that I love, and I'm not part of the equation. And that's a very, very advanced love. Very few people in the world are fortunate to get to that place. There are moments when we get to that place, little islands in time when we can get there. But as a general rule, it's something which, because we're humans and we're people and we have souls and we have feelings, it's a very, very challenging place to get to. Great tzaddikim get to there, to relate to God that way. And sometimes a couple married many, many years can get there as well. But let's see the chapter inside. So we're on page, for those following inside, we're on page Samach Beis. It's the second page of, it would be if it was number on the page 123. And we are about 4 or 5 lines from the top, the third word. V'hinei bi'ahava yesh gam ken shtei madreges ahava rab of avos elam. In the realm of love, just like when we spoke about fear and awe of God, there was 2 general categories. We called one the higher, or the pnimius, the internal one. One was called the lower, or the external love, of external fear. The same thing you have in the world of love. And this is going to go to the next few chapters talking about love. And as we had, by the way, interesting, we mentioned awe. We spoke for 2.5 chapters about the lower level of awe, and we spent 14 lines on the higher level of awe. And simply, we think the reason is, we don't know for sure why the Alter Rebbe did this, but we think the reason is because we can't relate really to the higher level, so we just gave a small, short synopsis of it. Same thing in the love. He's going to do a few chapters on love in the lower level. 7 lines for the love of the higher level. Because again, the Alter Rebbe is talking to us. He understands us, who we are, our challenges, and he tries to work in a relationship that we can deal with practically, not some, fantasy world of where some holy tzaddik could be, but where could we be as good, genuine, people trying to be the best we can, serve Hashem according to our abilities. So you have just 7 lines of the first type. So we said there's 2 types. One is called Ahavas Eilam, and one's called Ahavas Rabba. An interesting thing you may note, and I don't know the reason for this, I'm just pointing this out. I have no idea why. Maybe I'll discover something as we go through this. When it came to the awe, we started from the bottom, the lowest level, fear of sin, and then we talked about fear of, katnos and gadlos, what up, until we got to the highest level of yirei Allah, the highest level of fear. In love, we're starting from the top. We're going to mention the highest level first, and then work our way down. I'm not sure why, but must be a reason. Another thing just to be aware, the translation of Avas Elam, many people translate it to mean an eternal love, an everlasting love. But as we'll see, Avas Elam really is going to be understood as a love from the world, a love from within the world. Ahava Rabba is the love that it's just called a great, an abundant love. As we'll see, a tremendous love. Now, in general, when it comes to love, we have 2 terminologies that we use. Even though we associate love in general with fire, with heat, and it's the truth of both loves, But when it comes to the higher level of love, it's really called love of water. It's a pleasure love, meaning tanugim. It's just pleasure. It's just good. It's not that it's exciting and passionate and overwhelming, which is a lower level of love. That's fire. Ava Kaddish Ve'esh, a love like a burning fiery coal, like an intense heat. That's the lower level. Can you imagine? The lower level is an intense fiery heat. Then we have the higher level, which is a calm, cool, like a glass of water type of love. Very calm, not passionate. And we'll see there are three unique characteristics to this higher level of love. Ava Rabba, he Ava B'tanugim. The first thing about this love is it's a love of intense pleasure. There's a very big difference between intense pleasure and intense passion. Passion, there's an excitement, there's a activity going on that's tremendous. Pleasure is more like this intense enjoyment, like the satisfaction of a cool glass of water that just calms and relieves and soothes the soul. It just gives you an intense sense of self, of wholeness. It's a pleasure. The expression we find for this often is like two doves who are sitting. King Solomon in the Song of the Songs, he describes love like two doves who sit quietly near each other. What's these love? It's just a quiet enjoyment of each other's company. This is not an excitement and a passion. It's just an authentic, deep, deep sense of the pleasure and enjoyment of having that you're sitting next to the one you love. You could probably see it best or easiest to express, in my mind, a mother holding a newborn baby who's sleeping. You know, the brothers and the sisters have to come in and tickle and touch the baby and wake it up and play with the baby, not the mother. She doesn't need, she just wants to sit there and enjoy the company of this infant that's happy and content. A lower level is to require the baby to giggle and to laugh. Now, it's a great, great love. The same thing is true about a relationship. There's a lower level, which is very grand in its own, of the whole intimacy and the power and the unity that takes place in a relationship. But then there's the quiet time together, which in a way is a much more intense. There's a metaphor given that you say, what do you mean it's more intense? What do you mean? It's nowhere near intense. It's more intense when you're excited. They say a metaphor about a difference between let's say, I don't know what's considered today for each person the best delicious dish that you can get. Well, let's find a delicious pastry or cake or something which is an expensive dish that you can get. And a rich man who has it in his house and a wealthy person can have it for breakfast with his coffee, with his cappuccino, and he has it relaxed, eats it with his fork. The poor man has never seen it before. Gets invited to the rich man's house. He sees it. He grabs it. He grunts when he eats it. He makes noises and he swallows it and eats it. Doesn't use a fork. You could say, who enjoyed this more? Who had a much more noisy experiment, an exciting experiment? For sure. And by the way, there's a lot to be said about this in serving God. We'll see. And the excitement was the poor man, because to him it was novel, unusual. The excitement came from not having it, which, by the way, is why a husband and wife naturally, before they become one completely, have a passion together, because they're two different people, two different genders, two different personalities, two different people far apart are coming together. It's that bringing opposites together that bringing the excitement and the passion and the whole experience. So the poor man, to him, it's a brand new, exciting experience, something unusual to have this fancy pastry, and he's all excited, and he's making sounds, and he's slurping, and he's eating it, and he's drinking it. The rich man, calmly, simply enjoying it. So it looks like he doesn't really have a relationship with the cake. Try taking it away tomorrow morning. The poor man, okay, it was fun, now it's gone. The rich man, no. I want my cake. Because by him, it's part of him. Maybe you don't see the passion and the excitement, but it's inseparable from his daily routine and his part of his need. And this is me. This is my pastry. In other words, just because you don't see the excitement doesn't mean there's no intense connection and profound oneness of the one or the two things that are in this relationship. So we shouldn't misunderstand excitement and passion for relationship, because not every relationship where it's a deep, a powerful oneness is there going to be the same noise. Sometimes the noise is there because it's an early relationship, because there's still so many differences and there's so much space between you that coming together. We know that Unfortunately, it's a problem today in the world for a lot of relationships. But unfortunately, once something becomes accepted and normal, the routine, people lose their excitement. One of the reasons that people have challenges in relationships is because they get bored of the relationship. I'm with the same person for 25 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. Come on. For other people, it makes it a more intense relationship because no longer are we coming two different, unusual people coming together. We have become one. There's no longer two of us. It's when you can complete each other's sentences. The love there, while it's not as noisy, it's a much, much more intense, authentic, real oneness than two people coming together. Okay, so the first thing about this love is that it's a deep, profound pleasure, a deep, deep oneness that's felt. The second thing about the higher level of love is a very important thing. You can't get there. What does that mean? It's a gift. You can't get there, but it can be given to you. It's almost a difference between a tip and a salary. You know, a salary you rightfully worked for and earned it. And therefore, the salary is going to be based on the agreement, based on how hard I worked. So if the salary is $10 an hour or $1,000 an hour, if you're a lawyer or whatever you are, that's what you're getting. A tip is not guaranteed to get it. You might not. But and you'll see why I'm saying it's like a tip in a moment. But if you do your thing, there's a good chance that you will get something you didn't earn, and that is a tip. You see, a lot of jobs, I think it's possible, the tip is where they get paid, and that's different. But when a person gets paid anyway, and now they're getting a tip on top of that, that tip could be $20 and it could be $10,000. It has nothing to do with you, it has to do with the gift that you're getting, this thank you. And that's in general the rule of a gift. A gift does not come because it's something you earned. It's because you didn't earn it, but you got it. This higher level of fear that we're going to talk about, and we are talking about, is not something you can say, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to achieve it. You can't work hard to get this. This has to come as a gift from God. And that's why he says the next few words, this is something which is a flame that goes up on its own. In other words, it is a gift from Hashem. You can't work so hard to say, I'm going to get it and I'm going to earn it. You can't. It's a gift from Hashem to feel this way. But this gift has a condition. And that condition is the third thing that's unique about this love. The first thing is the intense, quiet pleasure or love that's there. The second thing is that you can't earn it. You have to get it as a gift. And the third thing, it's only given as a gift to someone who has true fear of God. And when we say true fear of God, we don't mean the highest level. The highest level is something that's actually after this love. We're talking about the general, basic, lower levels of fear. That if you don't have these lower levels of fear, you're never going to come to this higher level of love. So if you want to go in order, you can say there's the lowest level of fear, there's the lower level of love, there's the higher level of love, and then there's you can get to the higher level of fear. But if you don't have some basic, true, authentic fear of God, meaning if you don't have the ability, what's the definition we said in chapter 41 of fear of God? It means putting self aside. If you can't put self aside, you can never get to this higher level of love, even as a gift. So the third condition he says here, if you look at the next few words here, is Limi hu shalom b'yira keneda al maimed azal. It is only someone who is complete in their fear that they can achieve this higher level of love, this avarabba, this grand level of love. The next line the Alter Rebbe is going to say here is something which I hope when I say it, you'll disagree with. Because to me, when you read it, it's like interesting. He says, how do you know this is something that requires first fear and then love? There's an interesting Gemara. I remember learning this as a yeshiva boy in yeshiva. I learned it later when I got older. And there's a Gemara that says that it's the nature of a man to look for a wife more than a wife to look for a husband. Why? It says because the nature of a person to look for his lost article. If a man loses his wallet, does the wallet look for the man or does the man look for the wallet? Obviously, the man looks for the wallet. So the Gemara says the man had a rib. You had a pre-installed rib before you were born, so to speak. That rib is lost somewhere in their community or another community. Go find your rib. Go find your second half, your significant other. It's already out there. You got to find it. In other words, the man is the one with the lost rib. So Kabbalah explains this, everything we have in the Chumash, Everything we have in the stories, whether it's the flood, whether it's the story of Abraham, which, by the way, this is the weeks that we're talking about the love. It all comes from Abraham, which is the portion of the week. Every story in the Chumash has a simple, practical understanding. There really was a flood. There really was a boat. There really was Noah. There really was, the rib that was taken from Adam, etc. But everything also has a deeper Kabbalistic and metaphorical and also instructive understanding and interpretation. Says the Alter Rebbe, he explains, how do we interpret this verse that the man looks for the woman? He says it has to first be the man. The love has to come after. He said, look, the same words that say the man looks for his rib or his wife, goes to be read as the man comes after the woman. Man means love, chesed. The man is chesed. The woman is gevura, she is fear. The man has to come, the chesed has to come after there is fear. The man has to come after woman. Again, man is chesed, woman is yira, and the man has to come after the woman. So the obvious question here is, since when is that? Don't we always say the other way around? Shouldn't the woman be chesed? The woman should be kindness? What is it the men? So this is the line that I think is very fascinating here. And without doing a little sidetrack for a few moments to explain chesed and gevura, this is very perplexing. Like, what does it mean that the man is chesed and the woman is gevura? I would expect, usually in Chassidus, that the man would be yira or gevura, and the woman should be chesed. The woman by nature is more kind. So it gets into a very important understanding, which you find many, many times in the Rebbe's insights onto the Parsha, and especially into Avram and Sarah. We know Avram is called chesed, and Sarah is called gevura. Simply, we see it when Avram doesn't have the heart to throw Yishmael out of the house, or Hagar out of the house, and Sarah says, "Yeah, you have to go out of the house." We have to understand for a moment what's chesed and what's gevura. This is a very interesting idea. I think you'll enjoy this. It's a very interesting concept. The difference between chesed means kindness. I'm kind and I express kindness. Gevura really comes from the word judgment, meaning what is the right amount? How much should this person get? Should they get $10, $20, $100? Do they need this? What's the deserving amount? So chesed is about really the mashpia, the one who is giving. It's all about him. He is a giver. He is a kind person. I am kind, so I give. It's not about the receiver. So the chesed idea is like a man. The male is always the giver. He's the mashpia. In Kabbalistic terms, the masculine is the giver, and feminine is the receiver. She gets. The woman, the gevura, what's her consideration? Not how I feel. What does the receiver deserve? How much does this person deserve or need? In other words, by the man, it's all about him being the giver. By a woman, it's all about the receiver. Let's just take an example from this. There's two reasons why you can give charity. One is because you want to give charity, and one is because someone needs money. Look at Avraham Avinu. Hashem makes it hot after his bris. We're going to have it later in the portion. Hashem makes it hot after his bris. He has the circumcision at the end of the portion this week, and he has no guests. And he's standing outside looking, where's my guest? I need some guests. I don't understand you. The idea of guests are, if someone needs a place to eat, you take him in. If no one needs a place, he should be happy. No one's hungry. No, I need a hungry person. I need someone to feed. I need someone to be kind to. It says he was standing outside by the door looking for a passerby. Why? Because the chesed is not asking himself, does someone have a need? It's about me. I have a need. I want to give. It's all about the mashpia. The woman, the gevura, doesn't think about self. The question is, what is needed? How much is needed? What is needed? Where is it needed? So the woman who's the one who's not about self, she thinks about the receiver. She is gevura. You see the interesting thing, in marriages. I find it, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I find it to myself, certainly. The need to buy a gift on an anniversary for my wife. I find that I have that need more because I have to do something. I have to buy a gift. How about the gift that every single day the wife provides for the man in the house and does all the things? By the woman, her giving is not because she needs to give. There's a need and she takes care of it. The kids need supper, she makes supper. The man, the idea of a man, for an example, being a Kohen or a Levi goes by the father, and whether you're Jewish goes by the mother, because the man is important. Am I a Kohen? Am I a Levi? Am I a Israel? What's my role? What's my status? Who am I? Am I a woman? It's one thing. A Jew. I'm a Yid. The essence of a Jew comes from the mother. Whether you're a Kohen or a Levi comes from the father. Because by the father, his status, I'm a giver. I am doing something that is chesed. Chesed is for itself, a very caught up with self. Not a bad thing. It's just a characteristic. Gevura is caught up with other. What does the other need? It's like difference between the chachma in general, as you know, just as a sidetrack. We have always chachma being a das, chesed, gevura, teferes, netzach, hod yesod. If you know that there are really three triangles, and they really stack one on top of the other, chachma and chesed and netzach are all the masculine. Bina, gevura, and hod are all the feminine. And we know the third one is always the combination of the two, which is das, yesod, and first das, teferes, and yesod are the three combinations of chachma, bina, chesed, gevura, and hod, netzach and hod. But the bottom line is, gevura is the feminine aspect, which is surprising sometimes because it seems to be more of a masculine idea. I just wanted to explain that on the side. Going back into the Tanya. So going back to what we say, the nature of chesed is to come after yira. The relationship, and by the way, we mentioned this, if you remember, like a month or two ago, we explained why in a relationship in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, does the relationship have first refraining and then togetherness. The way nowadays we do under the chuppah, we give the ring, we have the engagement, which is really, technically, we call it engagement, but it's really step one of marriage. And step two, the chuppah happens used to be a 12-month separation. First, they gave the ring. The ring was such a relationship that you could not get separated without a divorce. You'd need to get a divorce to end that relationship. So you had the ring, and then you had the marriage. From the ring, which is the biblical engagement, until the biblical marriage, it was forbidden to have any physical contact with the husband and the wife. They lived separate. They weren't allowed to be intimate because the first stage of the relationship was separation. First, you have to have the yira, the awe. Only after that could you have the connection of chesed. You have to have in a relationship the respect, the awe for other before you can come together. Borders, properties, and our parameters are the basis, foundation for a true relationship. If you have a neighbor and it's not clear where his property line ends and your property line ends, it's going to be trouble. The first thing you need is to understand where is you, where am I, where are you, and then we can understand where we're not together and where we are together. So yira, the space has to come before the connection. The yira has to come before the chesed. And that's why he says here, the successful love of the higher level of love could only come to somebody who has true yira, true fear of God. Let's just say this inside one more time. He says, like our sages tell us, Darkei shel ish, it's a nature of man, lachzer or lechazer achar isha, to go after the woman. So in the Gemara it meant it's a nature of the man to go find his wife. You have to go look for your lost rib. But on a deeper sense, the ish, the chesed, the love, the ahava, has to come after the isha, which is the yira, which is the gevura. First comes awe, fear, and then comes love. First comes, which is interesting, by the way, because Hashem first created Adam and then Chava. Based on this, you should have created Chava first, but that could be another thing to look into one day. Why? I don't know. Okay, then he says further, and then he's going to explain how you see that chesed is masculine and how gevura or fear is feminine. He explains by verses. One verse we'll be very familiar with because it comes from Eshes Chayil, and one is from I think from Ashrei. He said like this: She'ava nikras ish, love is called man, masculine, v'zachar, masculine. Like it says, zachar chaste, the word zechar chaste means to remember the kindness. But as you know, the word zechar, if you change the vowels, will be zachar. Chaste, kindness, love is masculine. And v'isha, yiras Hashem, like we say in Eshes Chayil, v'isha yiras Hashem, a God-fearing woman. The woman, the feminine, is awe. And by the way, now that we know from chapter 41 the true definition of love and fear, it's the greatest compliment to a woman. We said the flaw of love of God is all about self. I love Hashem, I love him, he means so much to me, etc. The definition of awe, of fear, is the overwhelming sense of other. The other is, I'm scared of you. You scare me, you overwhelm me, etc. Meaning the compliment here to the woman is phenomenal to say you are selfless. And this is, by the way, a true nature of men and women. It doesn't mean, by the way, that it's every woman and every man. There are some men that have a masculine nature, and there are some men that have more of a feminine nature, some women that have more of a masculine nature. And this is not getting into the gender issues that we have today. We're talking about in character and personality. You have some people that have a more of a, you have throughout all of history that you have many men that have more of a feminine characteristics. When I say feminine characteristics, I mean Kabbalistically speaking in character. And you have women that are more masculine. But the general concept is that a woman by nature is more of a gevura, meaning she considers more the other than self. Now, it doesn't take away the possibility they can have a selfish woman. You can have a selfish man. You can have a man that's selfless, a woman that's selfless. We're talking about the natural pull. This is expressed most by a mother, and I gave this example many times. And I think anyone here who ever ate supper in their life can relate to this. When there's one piece of chicken short for dinner, you know it's not going to be the husband who misses the chicken. The wife's going to say, "It's okay, I'm not hungry, eat it." Why? How often does the man say, "I'm not hungry, eat it"? Yes, you are. Okay, I'll eat it. Fine. So it's very easy to convince the man to eat that last piece or to take the one extra one. Why? Because at the end of the day, the selfless joke, the joke about the selfish nature is more the man than the woman. This is how I once saw such a great, not a cartoon because it was a video. It was an actual video of mother and father chicken. You can see the hen and the rooster sitting by a big bowl of corn, and the corn had higher edges, and all the little chickies on the side they're bouncing, they can't reach to get corn. And you see the rooster standing there with his nose in the plate, munching on the corn, and the hen is taking one piece of corn out and giving it to the chickies. One piece of corn out, and it says on the bottom, the caption is of this little video, "That's why we celebrate more Mother's Day than Father's Day." That was the concept. But the essence is the idea of the ability to feel other, and that is Gevura. Okay. And therefore, if someone does not have, getting back to the idea of the awe and fear itself, if someone doesn't have a proper preparation of fear of God, of awe, and awe, like we said in chapter 41, putting self aside, you could never come to that true level of love, the higher level of love, where self is not part of the picture, where I don't love my spouse because my spouse made my life complete and makes me whole and makes me happy, and I feel much more serene or better and whole and complete. The love is nothing to do with me. It comes to a point where there's no longer I and you, there's just us. Or even more than that, there's just you. There's no longer the I love you. It's there's no sense of self anymore. The I doesn't exist anymore. And that's a level of love that's incredibly high to reach in a relationship with Hashem. Because at the end of the day, we function so much based on our feelings and our inspiration and what guides us and what's meaningful to us, etc. In physical world, you can find it more. You can find it much more. God forbid, when the Jews went through difficult times, how quickly a parent put aside themselves for the child. Both the father and the mother gave life up in a moment for a child, or a spouse in a moment gave life to save the spouse. If you give your life up, you're not going to have that person anymore. It doesn't matter because there is no me. So crazy, critical, unusual times gives us a chance to either, as I remember my father's talk, unfortunately, after the September 11th, he said, today was a day where we saw human beings choose to act like animals or act like angels. Not I mean to insult the animals. Meaning when there comes a time of a crisis or a moment of truth, you have a chance. You saw it, we saw it, but we know, like when boats went down, like the Titanic, there were adults and people that pushed other people out of the way to jump into a boat. And there were people that would not go into a boat until somebody else went in there. That's a moment of truth. Are you about self or other? And this is the idea that if you have true awe of God, then your relationship to Hashem can be without self. Because awe, by definition, does not mean being scared. Awe means I am putting self aside because in front of you, I don't matter. I don't exist. I don't have importance. That's the true definition of awe. This love comes from Atzilus. What does that mean? And we'll finish with this general concept for today. The process of creation in general encompasses four worlds: the world of Atzilus, the world of Beria, the world of Yetzira, and the world of Asiya. Atzilus being the highest of the four worlds. Then goes Beria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Asiya, the world of action, has two halves, two out of its halves, or two parts. There's the spiritual part and the physical part. We here in Mequon, Wisconsin, or in Las Vegas, Nevada, or wherever you are right now, we live in the physical part of the world of Asiya. That's where we are. The spiritual parts where the angels are, where we interact and do a mitzvah, we connect with the spiritual. This is the world of Asiya. Above that is Yetzira, above that is Beria, above that is Atzilus. Atzilus is the world where there's no separation between God and creation. In other words, it's called Atzilus. The word Atzilus means emanate. Emanate means what's something that emanates. It's like, or you could use another word, radiate. There's no existence of me separate. All you feel is the source. If you stand next to a heater and you feel the heat, you don't say, look at this, is heat. And there's, there's a heater there too, how interesting. You recognize that the whole existence of the heat is just radiating from the source of heat. Atzilus doesn't have identity separate from God. The beginning of identity separate from God is just like in our bodies. We have 10 powers. We have Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Where do you have the beginning of creation itself? The process of getting through the world is what's called Malchus, the very bottom of Atzilus. But until Malchus, until the very bottom of Atzilus, the very end, I don't mean bottom like in height, I mean the end of the process, until there's no identity for itself. It says the God, the light, the vessels are all one. Since the love of the higher level of love comes from Atzilus, in that world there is no separate existence. So there can't be, he uses two interesting expressions here. He says less Atzilus, if you're looking at that line there, it says the less Taman. Over there's no kitzutz v'pirut chas v'shalom. There is no separation or cut. In that world, there is no you and I. There is no way to say this is one thing, this is something else. In the world of Atzilus, there's only 100% oneness. Until we get to the very end, where we start expressing and creating the world of Beria and the world of Yetzira and find the world of Asiya, that's when you have apparent and obvious kindness and strictness. You have, restrictive and resilience and submission, all the different expressions of the 10 characteristics. And by the way, just remind ourselves what we said much, much earlier. The idea that we have these 10 characteristics in ourselves is one of the ways we understand 2 weeks ago's portion where it said that Hashem created man in his image. What is one of the Hasidic interpretations? That just like God in the process of creation used 10 sephiros, like the 10 heavenly, the process. We have the whole process of creation came through this chain reaction of chesed to gevura to tiferes, etc., and all their expressions. Same thing, every single human being, and particularly every single Jew, in their soul, both in your animal soul and in our godly soul, have these 10 characteristics, as we explained in the earlier chapters of Tanya. So we have within ourselves chesed, gevura, tiferes. The same thing you have it in all the creation, except in Atzilus, they don't exist separately. In Atzilus, they don't exist as separate identities. It's all emanate or radiating or part of God. And therefore, the love that comes from there, which is a higher level of love, can't have any separation. And that's why you need Yira as a prerequisite. So we didn't explain Yira before as a sort of to cover one and the other. You had to talk about awe and fear in order to get to the proper, true discussion of love. Just to conclude, so we said that these 7 lines were explaining the higher level of love. We're going to go now, the rest of the chapter, the next couple chapters, discussing the lower level. As we'll see, the lower level ain't so low, the lower level of love. But just to conclude, to remind ourselves, an easier way to understand these 2 levels, meaning not so much a lower level yet, but mainly the higher level, is a difference between the love you feel for a spouse or a loved one when you're near them, when you're far away. When you're far away from somebody, the love is felt much more. Think of any kid that we had in the house, any teenager, any somebody. They're in the house, they love you, you love them, but sometimes it's not felt so much. If God forbid there's a separation, not talking God forbid a serious separation of a loss. I'm talking about even someone travels away and goes to Israel or goes to another country or to out of town school, you miss the person. And you feel it. And the more you're away, the more the yearning begins. And the more I miss the person, the more I have feelings. And when you come back together, the greater is that moment of reconnection. You see them, and suddenly it's a huge hug in the airport. Oh, such a big hug. Why didn't you hug me yesterday like this when you were in the house? Because I didn't have that part awakened because I was too close. So what do you see? The further you are from the source, the further you are from your loved one, the more you can express, and the reconnection excites and makes that relationship. That's the lower level of love, where I feel, I yearn, I want, I need, it's all the need. That's beautiful, brilliant. We're going to talk about that for a few chapters. But the higher level is if you could actually feel, not that you don't feel it because you're home and you take things for granted. That's not what I'm talking about here. That is not good. Not taking for granted love, but that older couple love, sitting or married 50, 60 years. Not that they're older. Remember that. The older couple love who are sitting together for many years and they value the time together. It's not a boring time together. It's the most delightful thing, sitting and having tea and saying nothing, just looking at each other. That is the metaphor of King David of two doves sitting and looking at each other and soft cooing. He says that is the higher level of love. It's just pure pleasure. There's no me, there's no you. There's an absolute oneness and wholeness of being together without need to express anything in action. So just to conclude, that while we're saying this is a very high level, this doesn't negate the importance of action, the importance of service. We're just talking now from the perspective of love, because in the 30s of Tanya, we explained that who cares about love? All I need is action. If you don't feel, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Now it's saying, okay, we talked about the importance of action. Now we're going to talk about the importance of love.